Hey, it's Allie and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, we are going to do the autumn book tag. So I've watched quite a few of these book tags and all of them kind of have differing questions. So I picked the questions that I thought were most fitting for me and that I actually wanted to answer. And I'll put them all down below for you if you wanted to check those out. But let's go ahead and get into the autumn book tag. Question number one is, what is your favorite thing about autumn? And first, I would probably have to say the different color leaves falling and sweatshirt weather, which was more the case when I was in Ohio because you actually got that fall weather. Whereas now here in Texas, we don't get that as much. Fall here is like 80 degrees. Lucky if we get into the high 70s. There are trees here that do lose their leaves, but there aren't all the different colors that you get more when you go up north. So my other favorite things about autumn or fall is, of course, football season. Over the years, I've enjoyed watching football more and more. And I love Halloween and Halloween decorations, not to mention all the fun fall decorations. And Thanksgiving, of course, is in fall as well. And I love the smell of fall candles. So I get really super excited for fall because I'm ready to buy those candles and have my house smell like pumpkin. The next question is, what is your favorite horror/Halloween story? And for me, that is Bram Stoker's Dracula. I read that when I was, I think, in middle school. And then I watched the Bram Stoker's Dracula movie after I finished that, and I just fell in love with it. To me, that just screams Halloween to me, and that is what I really enjoy about Halloween. Like, my husband likes all the slasher movies and stuff, but I go more towards like Dracula and Frankenstein. I love that stuff a lot more. Now, I know to some, Dracula isn't necessarily horror. It's not super scary. But in a sense, back in its day, it probably was more on the scary side because my husband and I have been watching some of the earlier Friday the 13th movies, and they really aren't scary. The first three movies are like the same thing over and over, maybe just with different characters. So when Bram Stoker originally came out with Dracula, it probably was more on the horror side of things. The next question is, what is your favorite horror film? And I just mentioned Bram Stoker's Dracula. I do enjoy that one, though I wouldn't say that that's my favorite horror film per se. I'm not a huge horror film fan, but my favorite Halloween-ish themed movie is Van Helsing. I absolutely love Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman and Kate Beckinsale. I love that show. I know for some people it's not very scary, but I remember being a kid. I can't remember how old I was when it first came out. But I loved it and I wanted to watch it every night, but then every night I would have nightmares, but I still watched it the next day because I loved it that much. Besides Van Helsing, I also love Sleepy Hollow, and of course I have the same kind of stories. I was really, really young when I watched Sleepy Hollow for the first time. I want to say that I was 7 and I watched it on VHS. I used to go to my babysitters all the time, and in the morning before school started, each kid, every day, we took turns on who got to pick out a movie to watch that morning. And for some odd reason, I always picked Sleepy Hollow, and she let us watch it. So that's what we put on, and I still love it to this day. Question number 4 is, which book release are you most looking forward to this autumn? For me, that is, of course, Kingdom of the Cursed by Carrie Maniscalco. If you have watched my other videos, you guys know how much I loved Kingdom of the Wicked, and I cannot wait till Kingdom of the Cursed comes out. As soon as I get that book on October 5th, I am going to be binge reading it because I cannot wait to find out what happens to Amelia and how her story progresses. Kingdom of the Wicked was so, so good, and I feel like it's going to be a very addictive story for me, so I'm really hoping after the second book comes out that we don't have to wait too long for that third book to come out either. Question number 5 is, which film release are you most excited for this fall? And I have quite a few here. I was surprised by how many are actually coming out this fall that I'm really interested in. So let me get my notebook so I can read them off to you. So number 1 is The Harder They Fall, and this is a Western. It comes out October 22nd, but it will be on Netflix by November 3rd. So this is a Western that follows black cowboys. So back in the day when cowboys were a huge deal, 25% of cowboys were black. But in all of our Western movies and our Western history, they kind of have been forgotten and left behind. Feels like most Western characters are played by white actors. And in this movie, it's all about the Black Cowboys. I just watched the trailer for it today and it looks so good. I'm so excited for it to come out. I love Western, so I'm excited to see this version of a Western. The next movie that I am excited for is The Last Duel, which comes out October 15th. And it is set in, I want to say 14th century, I think. Matt Damon is the main character, and the main character's wife in this story has been raped, and she accuses the character that Matt Damon plays, she accuses his best friend of committing this crime. Adam Driver plays this best friend, and so the characters of Matt Damon and Adam Driver, they commit to a duel. So I love history, and I love the further back the history is, the more I enjoy it and enjoy reading it and watching it. So I'm really excited for this. It feels like it's been a long time since a historical movie like this has come out. So I'm really excited to see it. Now, of course, I have to mention Dune, which comes out October 22nd. And I know that it is half of the Dune book by, is his name Frank Herbert? I believe that's his name. Correct me if I'm wrong, you probably know. But I'm really excited for it. It has Timothée Chalamet in it and Zendaya. So that alone tells me that it's probably going to be a good movie. So I'm excited to see it. Now, I have two more movies. One is Eternals, which is November 5th, which is a Marvel movie. And the last one is Encanto, which is a Disney Pixar movie, I believe. And it's set in Colombia. And I thought, how neat is that? I love how all of their movies are becoming very diverse. And so it's interesting to watch these kids' movies that you kind of learn the culture of the different areas that they're in. So I'm really excited to watch that movie with the kids. I think they'll really enjoy it. Question number 6 is show 3 books that you are wanting to read this season. So I know I have a TBR, but if I were to scratch my TBR and just think at the top of my head of books that I want to read this fall, let me think. Give me a second. I'm going to pull them off the shelves for you. Now I have the 3 books that I would like to read this season. I do have a TBR set, so I don't know if I will get to these. One of these is actually on my TBR, but the other 2 are not. So I don't know if I'll just scrap my TBR and pick up these books, or if these just have to wait until I'm done with the books on my TBR. We'll see what I feel like and how much I actually get read this fall. But the first book is Hunting Prince Dracula by Carrie Maniscalco. I just finished Stalking Jack the Ripper and I was struggling a little bit through it. It was kind of boring for me, but I heard that this book is much better. And of course, I was just talking about Dracula, so I have to read a book that's themed about Dracula in the month of October. I feel like that's just a necessity. So this is a murder mystery, and the main character is Audrey Rose. And she goes to Romania, and her friend try to find the murderer that is draining people of blood. Now, of course, people are thinking that this is Dracula risen from the grave, but Audrey Rose knows better and knows that it is just a regular human that is murdering people and draining them of their blood. So, sounds a little grotesque, but that is just the kind of book it is. And I'm really excited for this one just because I love Dracula. And I know I didn't really like Stalking Jack the Ripper a whole lot, but I loved Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. So I'm hoping that this book will redeem this series for me. We'll see. I have the other 2 books in this series too, so I'm really hoping I like this one a lot more because I want to read those other ones too since I own them. But we'll see. The next book I have is The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. And this book, it kind of reminds me of the slasher films I was talking about that my husband and I watch sometimes. And this girl in here, I believe her name's Emma. Yes, her name is Emma. And she goes to camp. And while she's at this camp, the other girls in her cabin go out and never return. Emma wakes up the next morning and they're not there. Then Emma leaves the camp and she becomes very famous in New York for her art. But she wants to go back to the camp to see what really happened to these girls. So of course, with it being a Riley Sager book, it's going to be a thriller. There's gonna be some stuff going on in here. I'm really hoping that this book surprises me because that's the best when like either murder mysteries or thrillers and horror books, they just surprise you. You don't want to be able to guess what's going on in the story. You don't want to be able to guess who is actually the murderer or what happened to the people. You want to be surprised. You don't want to be able to guess it. So I'm really hoping that this book surprises me. Now, the third book I have here is a Fairy Loot book from August, I believe. And when I pulled this out of the Fairy Loot box, I was so excited. I really want to read this book. I think it's going to be amazing. It is These Hollow Vows by Lexi Ryan. This book follows a girl who is a human, and her brother is kidnapped by the Fae Unseelie Court. So what better way to go and rescue her brother than to have an alliance with the Seelie Court? And to do that, she is going to become engaged to the prince of the Seelie Court. But while she's at the Seelie Court, there is a spy there from the Unseelie Court. Now, if you haven't guessed it already, there's going to be a love triangle in here, which I know I've mentioned before. I love triangles. So really excited to read this. And I really wanted to read this during the fall. You know, fays and all that kind of stuff wouldn't necessarily remind you of fall. But does this book not remind you of fall? It does me with all of the black and the orange and the fall leaves. This just makes me want to read it in the fall. Question number 7 is, what is your favorite autumn candle to burn while you're reading? And for me, that of course would have to be Bath & Body Works Pumpkin Clove. I love anything pumpkin, anything Bath & Body Works pumpkin. I think I had gotten their white pumpkin, I think was what it was called. And it was good too. Anything with pumpkin in it, I'm all for. But the white pumpkin just wasn't as strong. So I will have to say I love the pumpkin clove because as soon as I light it in the house, you can smell it everywhere. As soon as you walk in, you smell it. You walk upstairs, you still smell it. So I love having the pumpkin clove burning, especially if I'm reading a fall-themed book or a spooky book. It just puts me all in the mood for autumn. Question number 8 is, what is your ultimate comfort read? And my answer to that is, I don't have one. So when I was younger, I would probably have to say Twilight, just because I had read it so many times and the books were still coming out. So I didn't know the ending to the story, so I wanted to read it all the time. But I don't really have a comfort read now, just because I have so many new books, or books that maybe have been out yet but I haven't read. I have so many books that I want to read that I don't necessarily want to reread books, because I have so many news stories that I want to hear. I have so many news stories that I want to learn about and read. So I don't want to take the time rereading a book that I already know the ending to. So I guess that's my simplest answer to I don't have a comfort read. Though there are books that I go back to and I think about, and sometimes like I want to reread them, but they make me think. Like one of them is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by B.E. Schwab. That is a book that I think about a lot. House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig. I think about that book a lot too because it surprised me so much in that book. There are a few books like that that I think about often, but I don't know that I have a comfort read that I go back to often when I just need a little pick-me-up. I don't really have a book like that. So that leads me to question number 9, which is, what is your favorite spooky read? And for me, that would have to be House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig. Now, going into this book, I knew that this was a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling. The main character in this book, her sisters keep dying unexpectedly, and they're trying to figure out why they keep dying, because it seems like they're not accidents. Now, that's all I went into this book knowing. I thought, well, maybe it's a mystery. I knew it was a fantasy, but maybe it had a little mystery to it. And I was not expecting this book to be a horror book at all. I don't know that I would have picked it up if I knew that it was a horror book, but oh my goodness, I absolutely loved this. It surprised me in so many different ways. And yes, there were a couple scenes in this book that I had to sit the book down because it was a tad scary and creepy. So I had to take a little bit of a breather with it, but it was so good. I absolutely love this book. Now I can say that I've not really read any other horror novels, so I don't have a ton to compare this to in the horror genre. But I will say that this is one of my favorite books compared to all the books that I've read, not just the horror genre. Question number 10 is, what book reminds you of fall/autumn? And of course I have to mention These Hollow Vows, which I just mentioned before, but it just reminds me of fall. Just the colors and the leaves. Like, look at the leaves on the back of this. The color schemes reminds me of fall. Like I said, I don't know that the contents of the book are necessarily fall themed, but the book definitely gives off those vibes. Since I had mentioned These Hollow Vows before, I wanted to bring up another book that gives me the fall autumn vibes, and that is Kingdom of the Wicked. So the front of this cover could give you like Halloween vibes. It doesn't necessarily scream fall, but the contents of this book are very spooky, and they have like the fog rolling in and the witches and the princes of hell. So definitely a book that is great to read during spooky season. And that's why I'm excited for Kingdom of the Cursed in October, because what a better time than the spooky season to read Kingdom of the Cursed. So the last question, question number 11, is when you're not reading, what is your favorite fall/autumn activity? And when I was in Ohio and I was younger, we used to go to corn mazes every fall. And I love the corn mazes. And it not only is there the maze there when you go, but they usually have hay rides and they have little fun fall activities for you to do there. I always thought that was fun. And I'm hoping that I can find somewhere around here for us to take the kids to, because I think that would be a great memory for them to have every fall too. So besides the corn mazes, I love carving pumpkins, and in my case in Texas, we don't carve pumpkins because they don't last very long. It's too hot, so we paint them. So I enjoy doing that. Obviously I've told you I like football. I like watching football, and especially when you're just at home on a Saturday and it's in the 70s, you're just having some chips and queso or chips and salsa and watching some football. Those are good days. And of course, I have to mention Halloween movies because that is so fun to watch. I love getting in the mood for Halloween, and it's very fun to watch all the kids' movies like Edward Scissorhands and The Corpse Bride and Hocus Pocus, of course. Now I gotta talk my husband into watching those with us, but the kids love them, and it's just a fun activity to do with the family. Those are all the questions for the autumn book tag. Like I said, I'll put them all down below if you're interested in doing the book tag as well. I will also link all my social media accounts down below if you wanted to check those out. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon if you want to be notified when I post new content. Thank you guys so much for watching my video today. I'll see you next time. Bye!